this episode of This Week in MMA, Matt, I'm back from Lewiston, Maine, covering NEF 39. We've got great content from that. We've also got recaps of UFC Greenville, Bellator London, as well as a new segment, and of course, as always, the Twitter Purge. So, let's get into it. Alright, and welcome to another episode of This Week in MMA. As always, one half of your co-hosting duo, Craig Allen. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Allen FNP. And my co-host, Matt. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matt Allen FNP. So, Matt, great weekend in combat sports. Finally,
I owe someone an apology.
We get some really good cards. Let's start out with your apology.
Yes. I would like to apologize to Rafael Lovato Jr. and his whole family. I remember saying he had a less than 0% chance. I said, the man's going to get beat in under a round. What else did I say? I said, he's never going to win. Here's the thing. He won, and he actually looked really good, and I was very, very wrong, and I felt kind of bad for hurting the man's name.
Bellator London.
Damn.
Overall, yeah, it was a great card. You also had UFC Greenville, which, in my opinion, it over-delivered. It was
really good.
It was a D-plus card at most. And, of course, NEF 39 coming live from Lewiston, Maine. I was there last night covering the event. Had a lot of fun. Some fight videos, some pictures. You can find all of the info, fightnamepicks.net. As I said, we're going to recap the weekend that was. But first, we're going to throw it to our new segment. And what we're going to be doing from now on, we're going to be doing a weekend video. We're going to be doing a preview show at the end of the week. So you're going to have 2 episodes of Fight Night Picks during the week. You can expect one Sunday, Monday, and one possibly Wednesday, Thursday when we come out with them. So what we'll do before this weekend, preview it. But today, to back it up, the new segment, we're calling it Round Number 1. And in Round Number 1, if you can and if you will, send us video questions. Pull out the phone. Just, hey,
it's like a selfie, but longer.
Yeah, and give us your questions. So for the first round, number 1, Matt, let's get into it. All right, so round number 1, of course, we had this weekend UFC Greenville, Renato Moicano Carneiro taking on the Korean Zombie, and it was a great card, and that's where our first question comes from. So, Matt, let's throw it over to that first question
After
here.
the Korean Zombie
it comes to us from
last night over
Middleweight.
Moicano, Jeremy Stephens took to Twitter pretty quickly to call him out. Just curious what you think of that matchup, given that they're both so
I don't think
aggressive.
that man watches MMA.
Who do you think would have the edge in that fight?
Okay, so first of all, really appreciate the question.
We do, but if he ever asks us another question again.
I mean, if we can kind of try and break it down here just quickly. So, you know, you had a weird mix here because realistically in this fight, it's kind of tough to say it, but if you do look at the rankings, Moicano at 5, you had Chan Sung Jung at 12. So a bit of a gap there, 7 fighter difference in that one. And if you look back at those rankings, I mean, realistically, it does make sense. Jeremy Stephens kind of sandwiched in the middle at 7. But, Matt, I mean, the point of round number 1, we're going to, discuss these takes in depth. And listen, does that matchmaking make sense? Do you think Korean Zombie deserves a guy like Jeremy Stephens?
Does Korean Zombie deserve a guy like Jeremy Stephens? It should be the other way around. Jeremy Stephens doesn't deserve a guy like the Korean Zombie. Jeremy Stephens lost pretty handily to Renato Moicano not that long ago. A lot of people don't remember that because it was kind of a lackluster split decision. But, and I know MMA math doesn't work, but Jeremy Stephens has lost 2 in a row. And what is it? 3. Okay, he's 3-3 in his last 6. Korean Zombie, I know his last 6 stretches back to like 7 years ago, but still, Korean Zombie had a knockout in a first round of his comeback fight of taking 4 years off. Looked great. Took another 1.5 years off, came back, had one of the best fights ever with Yair Rodriguez. Yeah, he got beat, but that elbow would knocked out a horse. And then all of a sudden comes back, beats Renato Moicano. He didn't just beat him, he damn right embarrassed the guy. He hit him with 2 punches, dropped him, took his back, almost choked him out, and then just kind of beat him up to get the stoppage. It was extremely impressive, very one-sided fight, very quick fight. And for the Korean Zombie, you're going to look past Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens is a dangerous fight. He's dangerous for anybody. He hits like a Mack truck. But here's the thing.
Whoa. Who's that guy?
Oh, He hits like a truck, and he didn't look that bad in his last fight against Zabit, but there's levels to this game, and I just don't think Jeremy Stephens is on the Korean Zombies level. They're both durable guys, but when you look at their skills, let's say both guys are tough, but one guy has the skills to go with his toughness, the guy with skills is going to win every single time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a, it's a gimme. You look at a guy like Jeremy Stephens, and, I mean, let's put in his body of work. So 28 wins, 19 by knockout, 2 submissions, 7 decisions. 3 wins, 4 losses in his last 7. You got losses to Edgar Moicano, wins over Gilbert Melendez. That was a tough one to watch. He really did destroy there. Duho Choi, he was coming off the big win or the big fight against Cub Swanson.
Exactly. But it was a Duho Choi that had taken a year and a half off.
Yep, and then Josh Emmett, where he just absolutely destroyed him, like destroyed him. So
like he got hit by a train.
Going forward, he had the fight in Calgary against Jose Aldo, where he was more or less expected to win that fight.
He was.
And then
Jose Aldo said, "Excuse me, young man."
Yeah, if he was able to get the win there, a possible title shot realistically at 45 in a stacked division. And a lot of people are talking right now that 45 is becoming the new 55.
Oh, without a doubt, 45 stacked.
Possibility that, it is more stacked than lightweight. And we've been talking about lightweight for, it seems, the past 2 years as being the most stacked division in the UFC. So after the Aldo loss, it's kind of a tough one. You put him up against Zabit Magomedsharipov, a guy that Matt's really, I don't know if slept on is the right way to put it.
I just I don't think he's the next champ right away. Like, let's be honest, Max Holloway right now would probably run a trade through Zabit.
Yeah, so, Jeremy Stevens taking on a guy who, he's alternated wins and losses. Jose Aldo, but that was in 2013.
Exactly.
A win over Dennis Bermudez in 2017, where he knocked him out in the first round. Then a loss to Yair Rodriguez in the final second of the 24 minutes, 59 seconds into the fight. And then he beats Moicano in the first minute. If we look at, the rankings, and it's always tough to try and gauge them, but you got your champ number 1, you got Holloway. Then you have Volkanovski. You've got Ortega, who's had quite a bit of a layoff now since UFC 231.
Right now.
Frank Yeager, who gets the next title shot. Then it's Moicano, Magomedsharipov, Stevens, Emmett, Cater, Bektik, Rodriguez, and then you've got, of course, Korean Zombie, Burgos, Lamas, and Elkins. And I mean, Korean Zombie going to be ranked high.
He'll be in 6 probably.
Yeah, he'll probably be that 6-7 mark. So Jeremy Stevens, realistically, and Brandon, a great question, really, because it's kind of tough to gauge who he might face here. For my money, I wouldn't put him up against a Volkanovski, maybe Brian Ortega.
Aldo.
And we're really starting to punch up. You could run it back with Aldo. Of course, there's storylines there. But for the new MMA fan and maybe even the casual MMA fan, these guys are going to recognize Korean Zombie. They're going to recognize Jose Aldo. And I think that's probably the best matchup to make. I know Aldo's talked about it. He wants to continue fighting. But maybe not for a title. And he's right up there. I mean, the wins that he's had lately, he's not redefined himself. He's just had a resurgence more than anything.
Yeah.
And even with a loss, he has looked great, the loss to Volkanovski. But I think a Korean Zombie fight makes a lot of sense.
I do too, and that's the good thing. Like, Korean Zombie won in under a minute and he took no damage. So really, out of everyone who benefits the most, it's the fans. Because right now, one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC is going to probably have a pretty quick turnaround. And I saw this tweet, I think it was Luke Thomas who put it out. The Korean Zombie was kind of like the original Justin Gaethje. Everyone knew that no matter what, win or loss, he was going to put on a show. And even after that 4-year layoff, even with almost a 2-year layoff after that, he still puts on insanely exciting fights. Like, you're going to tune in with the Korean Zombie fights. And like you said, if you put him and Aldo together, that's definitely a main event worthy fight. You can throw that on a pay-per-view and that would definitely boost your buys. Like, there's no negatives to that fight. I just don't think that a guy coming off 2 losses deserves to fight a guy who just got a knockout in a main event. Yes, rankings-wise, they might be similar, but I just feel like momentum-wise, which does matter a lot, it seems, in a lot of these matchups.
Especially as far as that sport and entertainment mix, that's one of those fights. TKZ taking on Aldo, you could throw that as a co-main event on a pay-per-view. Maybe you have a John Jones DC. Maybe that's one of those blockbuster type of pay-per-views that we're accustomed to. That's a good co-main event where you don't need to have a title on the line. Maybe a possible title shot, even though it's kind of a muddy waters of Volkanovski getting that win over Aldo, but still, you could sell this fight.
Do Volkanovski, Korean Zombie?
You could sell this fight easily to the fans. I think it makes a lot of sense. And Brandon, again, thank you for throwing us that question.
I gave you a hard time, Brandon, but it was a good question.
Yeah, and if you're following along Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you want to throw us a video question, we will more than gladly answer it on the show, and we appreciate everybody tuning in to watch. So again, all you have to do, DM us at Craig Allen FMP, at Matt Allen FMP. This has been round number 1, Matt. Let's get into it's not our favorite news segment now.
It's not.
It's just straight up our favorite segment.
It is.
The Twitter Purge.
It's time for the Twitter Purge.
It's time for, like she said, the Twitter Purge. And Matt, this past weekend we had NEF 39
going on.
coming at you from Lewiston, Maine. I was there covering it live. You can follow along on Twitter. Before the fight started, and late Thursday, it came out. Friday. I didn't have the chance to go to the weigh-ins on Friday. They started at 2 p.m. Eastern, but Josh Harvey was supposed to be competing in the main event. 6-0-1, the one draw to Joe Giannetti from season 27 of The Ultimate Fighter. Forced to withdraw due to weight cutting issues.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
He posted on his own personal Facebook there. And yeah, I was really looking forward to this fight. It was a fight that we kind of highlighted as one to be watched. I know Max Friedman, definitely a good follow on Twitter at Trademark MMA, kind of threw it out there. Hey, like what's going to happen here? Is this the Josh Harvey that we know, that we expect? A guy that we had previewed as maybe a UFC Bellator or Contender Series type of guy. And another thing to mention too, with the fights over the weekend, Matt Probin cornering quite a few different fighters. He's a guy that I'd seen compete with NEF in the past, but also his last fight with Bellator in the prelims. Got a win there. It was a fight that actually we didn't think he won that one, but still he got the win there and cornered a lot of fighters from CMBJJ in Maine. But still, the point is Josh Harvey having to pull out due to weight cutting issues. And this is a problem that we just keep seeing over and over again. And Josh Harvey, for my money, a big guy to be fighting at 45, a guy that makes a lot of sense for 55 moving forward. I mean, what do you have to do in your camp? How do you retool from this one?
I think, Michael Chandler said it. Your weight cut starts 2 months before your fight even happens. Like, you need to plan this ahead of time. And if you've done it before, you should be able to do it again. He's still a young guy, so weight cutting shouldn't be that big of a problem for him because, and I know that's easy for us to say because we don't do it, but you always notice when a guy's younger in his career, they can cut a massive amount of weight and still be pretty much fine. Because your body can just recover so much quicker. But the more that you do that weight cut, the more that your body kind of resists against it.
Yeah.
So there's really not a great excuse for Josh Harvey. I do hope he recovers. Like we said, some of the symptoms with the blurred vision, fluttering heartbeat, like those are terrifying things to happen to anybody. But it's just, you got to be a little bit more professional than that. Your weight cut doesn't start the week of the fight. It should start months in advance.
Yeah, and it was a tough one there. And I mean, moving forward with the card, there were 15 fights split between pro and amateur. There were 2 pro fights at the top. And amateur flyweight champion crowned Glory Watson moved to 5-0. And I know in her fight before this, it was a tough go. It was a really close fight. In this fight, she's taking on Caree Hill, coming at us from Team Quest. And when I saw that on Tapology, I thought, Team Quest, no way. It's got to be like a hole-in-the-wall gym somewhere in the middle of nowhere. No, it was legit Team Quest from Oregon. Chael P, Fernando Gonzalez has spent time Team Quest. All sorts of great fighters. That we've had on the show before. It was kind of a weird scoring because you had it, as you can see on the screen, 48-47, 49-46 for Hill, and then 48-47 for Watson. For my money, I had it tied 38-38 going into the final round. It was a really, really close fight. I saw it by way of Hill, actually. I had it scored 48-47. But yeah, it was a really, really close fight. And a tough one. I don't envy the judges there, but Hill really pushed the pace, kept it going up against the cage. You can find some of those fight videos. They're up, fightnightpicks.net. You can find those live results. But realistically, this was fight of the night. And I had this circled on my card as being potential fight of the night, and it delivered. I mean, sometimes when you see 5-round amateur fights, even if there's a title involved, I mean, who cares? Like, Watson was 4-0, Hill was 4-1. This was a fun fight, and realistically, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, either of these two fighters, once they start their pro career, they're going to have a lot of success at 125.
And that's just what I was about to ask you. Do you think Watson does have a pro debut after this fight?
100% she should. I mean, I can understand, maybe you want to defend the belt once. It was announced during the card that the next NEF card, so this was 39, so 40 is going to be University of Maine and Orono. Listen, if you're a hockey fan, Dynasty in NCAA. Listen, they had Paul Caree on one of those national champion teams, the back-to-back teams in the 90s. But still, Glory Watson, obviously representing Young's MMA in Bangor. I think she has a legit future. And listen, her boxing was crisp. She threw power punches at one point that rocked Hill. Hill kept going for that clinch, for the knees. Her corner was yelling for foot stomps quite a bit, which, listen, I love it when corners yell for foot stomps. And she obliged. She actually did it. But this was, like, I'm still psyched about this. It's still fresh in my mind from last night. But, yeah, Watson moving in and out great. Power punches were good. The one thing that I noted was it was such a close fight. There was about a minute and a half left in that 5th round, and it could have gone either way. Watson threw a flurry and then pushed ahead and clinched with Hill, and that's always a problem. We saw that with Dana White's Susie and Contender Series this past week. I mean, Loughnane all over that fight, and I mean, second time in the UFC, this is his chance, and he goes to clinch with 10 seconds left, but there was a minute and a half left. I thought, if you want to be decisive in the minds of the judges, you have to do something, especially where that's fresh in the minds. and she just decided to clinch, threw some knees. She was able to get the win, so I'm sure she's going to, go back to camp, deal with that in the future. But overall, look forward to both of these women making their pro debuts because, you could have flipped a coin to pick a winner here. They were both great, and it was a really entertaining fight. And if you get the chance, if you're in New England, if you're in New Brunswick, the Maritimes, be sure to go down for NEF 40 coming at you from the University of Maine in September. That's the next card. I know Ross Hilton, who's been on the show, he's going to be competing for the now vacant Cruiserweight Championship because Jorgen De Castro,
he's in the big show.
Throwing that away. He's in the big show. I tweeted that out. He tossed the like, so yeah, he must have vacated it. And you've also got Zach Richard, who's been on the show in the past. He's going to be competing there as well. But moving forward, so we had Bellator London / Bellator 223 taking place.
/ Bellator in the morning, but you don't know about it till night.
So I threw out the question, and it was a joke. But Bellator by tape delay, what do you say? And listen, Shane Connolly had fun down in the comments. Somebody said tape delay is great. So, tape delay sucks.
It's the worst. It makes no sense. And I know that Bellator really doesn't want to do tape delay. It's Paramount who kind of pushes for it, but it doesn't make any sense, especially nowadays. Everyone who watches MMA, especially Bellator, because it's more of a haven for the hardcores. Everyone who's hardcore MMA fan has Twitter. If you go on Twitter, you're going to see the results.
And I think too, and this is kind of weird for me to say this, but the move to a streaming service for Bellator, I find's gone a lot better than it has for the UFC. And listen, I can't talk about that from I can and can't from a first-hand perspective because in Canada we're still Fight Pass and television, whereas in the States,
it works great.
Television plus ESPN plus. But up here, I watch everything on DAZN for Bellator. I watch NFL on DAZN as well. And to draw a parallel from another sport, and listen, I know MMA fans, you don't like this, but the Tampa Bay Rays are going to split time between Montreal and Tampa Bay. And if they're going to talk about breaking a lease agreement, I know you can't do it with a TV deal, but man, you got to explore something with Paramount Network. Try and come to some sort of conclusion because when you do this between Paramount and DAZN and you got it by tape delay, or if you're over in Europe and you're splitting it between Sky Sports, BT, there were 2 or 3 different networks carrying the entire thing. It's ridiculous, and I wish there was a resolution.
Do you hate viewers, Bellator?
The other thing is 18% saying I never watch Bellator, and I threw that in there as a bit of a teaser as well, but yeah, you're missing out. I mean, if we can go back to the start of the clip.
I don't need to apologize again, do I?
Such a close fight. A really tough one to try and figure out. And listen, judges scoring it the way of Rafael Lovato Jr.
I know it was a majority decision, but everything that I saw did give it to Lovato Jr. I had it for Lovato. I thought it came down to the last round, and Lovato was kind of all over Gegard there. It surprised me so much. Just when you look, Gegard is not an easy guy to take down. He doesn't have amazing takedown defense. He's not like a Robert Whittaker in that regard, but he does have very sound takedown defense. And against a guy who's not really known as a wrestler, he's a phenomenal grappler, but his wrestling's not, it's not like an all-American level. For him to go out there and take Mousasi down, grapple him, take his back, do it all over again. It was extremely impressive, and I really had to eat my words on this one, but I couldn't be happier for him. I mean, you can see the outpouring of emotion. He really did earn this, and he did fight one of the best middleweights on planet Earth to get that title.
100%. We'll get into the breakdown of that a little bit later on with the weekend recap, but as we continue on, I mean, just more of a reaction from Bellator as a whole. Aaron Chalmers, getting a win there, but busting a bracket, so to speak. Busting an MMA fans gambling parlay. So it goes. And nice. Listen, throwing it out there. Send me your PayPal. And he actually did pay the guy.
There's another tweet later on where he does show that he did in fact pay him. So that was kind of nice to see.
And the thing about it, and listen, Paul Daley, Eric Silva, Paul Daley able to get the decision win there. Listen, I thought he was going to be able to get the finish.
It was a weird fight to go to decision.
Yeah, I mean, he did a great job. And overall, Bellator, I think it delivered. We gave it an A grade before the fact. And Greenville, we gave it a D+.
It was a B.
Look at this knockout.
Okay, Korean Zombie is legit. He's back. He has the best walkout in MMA history. I don't care what you say. Don't give me that Vanderlei Silva pride. Don't give me that Wild Boys Mirko Krokop pride. Zombie with the Cranberries, with him coming out, is by far the best walkout.
Yeah, so great win there in that main event. If we continue along with the UFC, I told you. I came out and said, hey, look out for Biggie Boy. He's going to get the knockout. I thought it was going to be a come from behind. All it took was a jab.
Craig's been big on Biggie Boy.
That's stern right hand. And listen, he's going to struggle with grapplers. He's gonna struggle with BJJ guys.
You stand up with him, though.
Listen,
he's going to kick your head 10 rows into the crowd.
I will say this. put him up against Fabricio Verdum. He's going to lose 9.5 times out of 10.
No, he's going to lose 100 out of 10. Not even possible.
Walt Harris is a striker, and he lost in the first minute. But Jairzinho Rosenstruck, I think, yeah, maybe that 8 to 15 type of guy.
I would like to see him get a rank guy. Heavyweight's pretty shallow, and just his excitement level is kind of through the roof.
We said potential fight of the night.
It was a good fight.
It delivered. Dan Ige, Kevin Aguilar. I mean, Aguilar getting his first loss in about 9 years or 6 years,
Great
9 fights. And Dan Ige coming through again. Such a fun fighter to watch, and his ceiling just keeps getting higher as well. Moving forward, the card that I paid zero attention to, I made my feelings known with it. Robbie Fox, kind of went the same way that I did.
This is my thing with bare knuckle. We were talking about this before. Once you kind of get past the fact that they cut each other with every punch, it's really not that high level of fighting.
And now I'm going to tell you my true thoughts about bare knuckle fighting.
Please do.
I haven't said here. So when I first started with the Dialogue radio show, myself and Ty O'Keefe, we talked a lot about bare knuckle. We were pushed to start doing miniseries. So our very first miniseries was a bare knuckle. We had Christina Marks, we had Tony Lopez, we had Jeff Houston, ring announcer from BKFC. We were psyched about it. And Tony Lopez is a big deal with not just MMA, but
times.
bare knuckle fighting as well. So I got kind of sucked into it, and I watched the second BKFC. I watched WBKFF.
Of the ones where the fighters don't get paid.
I went back and watched the Vice documentary on the first BKFC, and I was sucked in because Dave Feldman sold it to me. Like, this is going to be the next thing. It's very, very, very highly technical because punchers, listen, I mean, you can't punch somebody in the head. You can't punch somebody in the forehead.
We saw it even in MMA with gloves. Saw with Anthony Smith and Alexander Gustafsson. If you hit someone right on the forehead, a lot of times you're going to break your hand.
Okay, so that was what I was told. It's going to be a lot of bobbing and weaving.
So technical.
A lot of body shots. That's what we're going to see. This is a mix of MMA fighters that couldn't cut it in MMA. It's a mix of boxers that couldn't do it.
Or they're 73 years old and should be fighting anymore.
Or people that want to get their feet wet and think it's going to be a quick payday. And listen, Jimmy Smith and Ryan Moody gave it a great explanation, and Jimmy in particular on our MMA show, so go check that one out. But realistically, yeah, it's not good competition. No. I mean, we saw it in this main event. I had picked Malignaggi, of course. I mean, a championship boxer against a guy who had a losing record in MMA and had the chance to cover his last MMA fight. And listen, Michael Johnson outclassed him. Yeah. And Michael Johnson, wishy-washy. I know a lot of people don't like Michael Johnson, think he's not very good. But either way, it's just a circus. It really is. I mean, the way that they're selling this fight, and I understand people online disagree with me. I get it. There's a line that you don't push. You don't spit on people. You can't hit people with microphones. Listen, and I know. People are showmen. Go back and watch what Mike Tyson said to that reporter that time. I'm going to do you till you love me. And he went on with that statement. Yeah. But regardless, there's lines that you can't cross. And Dave Feldman's trying to cash in on this stuff. I get it. I understand it from a promoter's perspective. It's gold. And I'm sure a lot of people went out and flocked and bought this for...
I don't think they did. I bet you 95% of the people who watch this illegally streamed it.
$54.99 Canadian. You think I'm going to spend that kind of money?
No.
I mean, of course, I was at New England Fights. But still, they're charging way too much. It's watered down competition.
It is.
And the other thing about it is, we have all this in-house talent. And it's been said time and again. Robin Black, Jimmy Smith, other people have said this. Over in Europe, and I'm sure Adam Labar, another guy that you can follow on Twitter, who covers the sport with BKB. But still, over in Europe, they have their own type of talent that they build up in-house. It's a real legit sport.
But they're built up as bare-knuckle fighters. They're not MMA fighters who try their hand in that sport.
Exactly. You come into this, there's very few fighters in North America. I mean, Bobby Riz is one guy. Sam Shoemaker, that kind of like Anthony Smith, saw an ad and thought, hey,
The difference is Anthony Smith is a skilled fighter.
Now, I will say this, though. Sam Shoemaker for heavyweight, fighting against Chase Sherman at the last BKFC event.
Chase Sherman?
At the last BKFC event showed that bare-knuckle fighters can hang with MMA fighters.
I've seen Walmart greeters who could beat Chase Sherman in a fight.
He's had a good run outside the UFC and Isle fights.
Has he, though?
My point being, in North America, you're not going to see a lot of true bare-knuckle fighters. You're just going to see a lot of crossover. It's going to be a lot of watered-down crossover. And another thing that they mention as well is the fact that, you know what, you could throw a belt on either of these guys to win. I know there's a Grand Prix type of tournament going on in this weight class.
Can't wait.
But you could just throw a belt on them. And I do get this as well. The Police Gazette is involved with these belts, the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame. I know Scott Burt. He's a good guy to follow along on Facebook. He runs.
Go outside.
He runs the Bare Knuckle Hall of Fame, but still, and I understand his enthusiasm for it and covering the sport, but at the same time, this isn't translating to that.
No.
This isn't history. It is, but it's not. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. And bare knuckle boxing, I don't mean to be like a Debbie Downer. I really can't see it. Or BKFC, I guess WBKF,
Just bare knuckle boxing.
It's probably like it's not around anymore. But I really can't see bare knuckle FC being around longer than maybe 2 years. It just doesn't seem like it's picking up the casual following that I think they were hoping to when it originally happened.
And this fight did. I mean,
it did. But really, how many pay-per-view buys do you think this did?
This overshadowed MMA this weekend because it was a weak UFC card and Bellator was tape delay. Everybody was upset.
I agree.
So they just kind of picked up on this. And one other thing to mention. That's the biggest fight you're ever going to be able to book in
without a
knuckle
doubt.
Boxing. You're never, ever going to get it. Like, the fact that Paulie Malignaggi, a former champ, lost...
That man fought Amir Khan.
But he lost to Artem Lobov. You're never going to have another big-name boxer like that ever compete in this ever again.
This is another thing that I think we learned. And this might be a bit of a hot take, but I think it's very true. If you put an MMA fighter against a boxer... If the rules aren't exactly boxing rules, the MMA fighter is going to win. I don't care if you add just minor details to allow the MMA fighter to use some of their other skills. Unless it is pure boxing and all you're doing is using your hands, MMA fighters are going to win no matter what. They're just way more skilled.
Yeah, it's really a tough sell. And it's this is the ceiling for these events. I know, you got fighters like Chris Liebman, Joe Riggs. Like, you're really trying to capitalize on those guys. And another point that Jimmy Smith made, too, with the point of Joe Riggs, Chris Lieb, and guys like that.
Dakota Cochran?
Not necessarily Dakota Cochran. The point is,
Johnny Hendricks.
There's a point where you're over the hill. They wouldn't allow Chris Lieben to sign a contract. He was going to sign a contract with Bellator after a long layoff from the UFC. Multi-fight contract to compete there. They said no.
You couldn't pass medicals.
Yeah, the doctor said no, you couldn't pass medicals. So now you have guys in MMA that, tail end of a career, retirement, things aren't going their way. They can't pass medicals and get tested for MMA. Let's just try out bare knuckle boxing and see what happens. I mean, it's just going to be a degradation of skill and ability as a person, and it's not what I want to see. And listen, yeah, you go back to last summer, I thought this was going to be the next best thing. I had high hopes for it, and now just seeing where the sport's going, I don't like what I'm seeing.
Here's the best way I can describe it. No disrespect to anyone who plays in the G League. I watch NBA because I love the game of basketball. I don't watch the G League. You know why? I can watch the better version of that on another channel. This is very similar. I can watch regular boxing or MMA with the best fighters on planet Earth instead of bare knuckle boxing with a bunch of people past their prime, like you said, over the hill, who can't pass medicals. And yes, there's some very skilled fighters in bare knuckle boxing. I'm not throwing everyone in the same pool, but you can watch a better version of that same product.
I will disagree with you there because if you're talking about lower leagues, I mean, the LFAs, the KSWs, the one championships, rising to a certain extent.
The difference is those are real leagues. BKFC isn't. Those all have
even regional promotions ready to go.
They all have better fighters than Bare Knuckle FC. That's what I'm getting at. You can watch the minor leagues, but when you're watching the minor leagues of something that doesn't even have prime athletes in it, that's when you're just getting a watered down product. And I really do feel like that's what Bare Knuckle FC is. And I'm sure they do have some hardcore fans out there, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure that they draw
for 6 events.
Exactly. I'm sure they draw a decent crowd. It's just I don't see the long-term appeal of
the other thing that's really tough. So first state to legalize bare knuckle boxing, or re-legalize since the early 18 to 1900s was Wyoming. So you had BKFC, the first one. I think the second one was also there. WBKFF was in Wyoming. And then they've moved it to Mississippi, so it's legalized there. They've also had it in Mexico.
The prime states.
They had it in Mexico as well. This is a sport, like, MMA was a stretch, and I don't care about your political views. I know John McCain was very, very against it. New York State legislators were very against it, and those are typically polar opposites as far as politics are concerned.
Oddly enough, I know who was for it.
With bare knuckle boxing, how in the hell are you going to get this legalized in New York or California?
That's a very good example. Okay, I know it was Meryl Streep who said that without diversity in sports, all we would have is NFL and the mixed martial arts, which are not the arts. But if you guys are watching this, MMA is an art form. When you watch Yair Rodriguez throw a 720 head kick, that is an art.
Or Raymond Daniels, spin around and then
That's
the
what I mean.
punch.
There are some very artful fighters out there. You have guys like Tony Ferguson, and they're dancing while they're doing it, and they're in this very unique flow state that you really can't achieve in any other sport. You don't get that in bare knuckle boxing. It is not an art form like the other versions of martial arts are.
And especially the
We've talked
fact
about this
that
for way too long.
we're looking at a possibility in the next bare knuckle event. You're gonna have Jason Knight main event again.
Against Leonard. Leonard Garcia is 73 years old in fighter years, and he hasn't won a fight in 60 years.
Leonard Garcia is a guy that they're trying to bank off a name value, former UFC name value, and he's competed in bare knuckle before, but Jason Knight's a grappler. And I know he had a big fight against Artem Lobov, and it was bloody, and he had all the cuts.
Phenomenal.
But nobody wants. I'm listen. People are gonna buy it, but nobody wants.
People who watch NASCAR.
No, that's enough. But nobody wants to see Leonard Garcia, Jason Knight. That's kind of wrapping up the Twitter purge on a sour note. You got all my feelings about bare knuckle. You got Matt's feelings.
We're fired up.
Now we're out there, and you know what? Now it's time to get into the weekend recap.
It's time!
All right, Matt. So, weekend recap, of course, on Saturday night, now that I got bare knuckle out of my system, I was in Lewiston, Maine from the Androscoggin Bank Coliseum. And listen, I wrote an article about this before the fact, hallowed grounds, because in 1965, Muhammad Ali took on Sonny Liston in their rematch, and he got that crazy knockout, or knockdown. That's the iconic picture you see everywhere where he's standing on top of him. Awesome stuff there. So, pretty cool to say that I've been to the rink. Bit of an older rink.
He's basically friends with Muhammad Ali at this point.
Yeah. But no, it was a great event had by all. And I tell you what, can't say that I've ever really seen a wedding taking place. And the video just doesn't want to play now that we're going. But still, a wedding took place.
And just thoughts, because one half of FNP is getting married here soon. Would you ever consider having your wedding inside of a cage?
Can't say that I would.
Good call.
But Cam Arnold, the amateur bantamweight champ, a guy who's been knocking people out cold of late. Congrats to him.
Yeah.
His new wife. They got it done in the cage. A little bit of a dance after the fact. There was a toast. There was champagne.
From the video I saw, it looked like a weird cult meeting.
No, it wasn't. But a great time had by all. And regardless, a great card as well. So you can check that out, fightnightpicks.net. You can see the live results.
Great article by Craig.
As far as they're concerned. And some fights to note. Gary Carr, who was 1-1, taking on Clifford Redmond, 0-9. Redmond had been finished in every other fight.
Not Redmond like Wu-Tang Redmond?
No, I will say Clifford rocked him at one point, and Gary Carr able to just finish off strong in the first round, gets the win by TKO. The main point I will make, Gary Carr turns 59 in a couple of months. So the oldest fighter to ever compete in the NAF cage at 58, broke his own record there, getting the win. You can
you
see
imagine get your ass beat by a 58-year-old?
You can see it happens every night at a bar somewhere. You can see
me at Doley's in about 3 days.
You can see the highlights from the Glory Watson fight against Caree Hill. Of course, after that, it was supposed to be a fight for the title. You had Nate Boucher taking on Robert Presley. Ended up moving it to 130 pounds instead of 125 for the belt. You had Keegan Hornstra taking on Dominic Jones. That was a fun fight, back and forth, but it was done in the first 57 seconds. And then in the main event, you had Lewiston's own Jesse Erickson trying to, get the NEF record for most wins. Wasn't successful. It was Dylan Lockhart coming in to the state, getting the win there by TKO, becomes the new NEF lightweight champ. And one other thing I will note, and there's always prospects that you should watch. I know Caleb Hall was a guy that we had on the show recently in the last year, and he's just looked great so far in his career with NEF. He's a guy you should definitely watch. One other guy that you should watch as they go up and down through these
8-second TKO.
8-second TKO by Jason Landry. That was a good win there. Nate White getting a win as well. Mike Murray. Mike Murray was a guy that came in a karate stance. Listen, it was his debut as an amateur. This guy had so much spunk. He looked great.
The spunkiest fighter in NEF, you could say.
He taunted his opponent. He jumped on top of him. He got the win by rear naked in the first round. Celebrated with his corner. Little cocky in the win, but listen, I like it, and I want to see more of Mike Murray. He's definitely a guy that you should watch. I know it's his amateur debut, and realistically, people are going to say, oh, it doesn't matter. Matt
you got to start somewhere.
Oh, who cares? But yeah, you got to start somewhere, and he looked great. And a great debut for him. And if we move forward, Matt, Bellator,
That's
UFC Greenville.
All right.
We gave this a letter grade of an A before it started. Do you think that holds up after the... Or, sorry,
We gave
D+?
it a D+.
I've got Bellator.
It definitely deserved higher. I know this is one of those things. Every card in which that doesn't have a big like name value with a lot of its fighters, it's usually going to deliver no matter what. As we saw, just the first fight in the card, which is usually tends to be the worst, but it definitely wasn't. You had Eric Spicer making his UFC return after having 2 successful outings outside of the UFC.
Both finishes.
Coming back to fight on Deron Winn, who's like a miniature DC, I guess. That's kind of what he's been marketed as. And as you pointed out, he has the record for most significant strikes landed in a middleweight fight in his first UFC fight, and it was only 3 rounds.
And he's only 6-0 right now.
Exactly. And to fight a guy like Eric Spicer, and you can say, he's been very up and down throughout his UFC career, and you would not be wrong at all. It's just to fight a guy with that much more experience than you in the UFC, and everyone likes to point out UFC jitters, octagon jitters. I mean, Deron Winn had none of those. It was a phenomenal fight. He came out guns blazing, just volume.
This was another one of those fights that Matt had completely wrong.
I didn't expect much out of this, but it was amazing. Deron Winn came out through big, but honestly, Eric Spicer was there the whole time. He looked to get tired a little bit in the second round, and all of a sudden kind of caught his second win.
I just hope that, he gets another shot in the
think he
octagon, because he's one of those guys, the win over Thiago Santos.
Which is insane to think of.
This fight here, and he looked great outside of the promotion
did.
back with CES, so hopefully Eric Spicer gets another shot. The next fight, Ariane Lipski taking on Molly McCann.
I'm so disappointed in Lipski. Craig and I have been shouting her out, saying how KSW is breeding fighters over there to come to the UFC.
Like,
and
look at Karolina Kovalkiewicz.
Well, let's not.
I mean, she came over from KSW, and she's on the decline right now. I know she's talking about retirement, but let's credit where credit's due. Yes. Molly McCann did actually look really good, and coming back off a fight where she had a terrible injury that wasn't a broken orbital, kind of like Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah,
wasn't a broken orbital, but a good performance by Molly McCann.
It was. Alan Crowder, you went to sleep real quick off a. Here's the weird thing. Yeah. I don't even know.
Jairzinho Rosenstruck.
Jairzinho must hit so GD hard it's not even funny. If you get dropped by a jab, and then the other punch, I'm trying to think. Remember when Showtime Pettis knocked out Wonder Boy, and he knocked out that Superman punch that didn't look like it hit all that hard, but the 2 hammer fists after it, he punched his head through the mat. And this wasn't like that.
Even Rosenstruck's follow-up, the right hand where he just kind of landed it.
It was like the weight of his arm landed, but he must hit ungodly hard.
Like, he could be a guy that we see just continue to climb up those ranks. Maybe doesn't have a ground game. Maybe his cardio can be suspect.
But he's an excitement guy, and the UFC always needs people like that.
Remember how Derek Lewis got a title shot? He's a guy that didn't have a ground game, and he hits super hard.
He gets up, though.
I know, but
Derek Lewis can be mounted by Fabricio Verdum and just decide, I don't like this anymore, and get up.
Jairzinho Rosenstruck, definitely a guy. We've been selling him. He's a guy that you should definitely pay attention to.
I'm on that boat.
If we continue to move forward, Matt Wyman, that it's just a name that's tough to pronounce because you think Watt Myman, but in this fight, taking on Violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena, and this is a fight that most were surprised that Wyman made it out for the 3rd round.
Yeah, they should probably stop this in between the 2nd and the 3rd. Luis Pena, I feel like this was the first fight where Luis Pena really showed what he's all about. This was kind of the first fight that he showed up in the UFC. I know he won his last fight, but he did miss weight. He really put everything together. Matt Wyman had a few really good exchanges, especially on the ground. And I think, again, shout out to Luke Thomas again, he pointed out, like, 5 years ago when Matt Wyman was still fighting, that would catch a lot of people. It's just MMA has evolved so much in 5 years that you're really not going to catch, and not even the highest of the high guys, you're not going to catch those, like, good prospects and stuff like that. Luis Pena looked phenomenal. Definitely not top 15 next, but he's for sure a prospect to keep your eye on. He's looking great.
And I mean, that even goes to show how good Mike Trezano was in the win against them. And if we continue to move forward, Ashley Yoder, I had picked Siri Kondo to get back in the win, back on a bit of a win streak. She was former Pancrase champ. She comes in the UFC, gets a win, and now she's on a 3-fight skid. And Ashley Yoder, to her credit, I mean, she's not a finisher, but she really, really went at it and had a good fight here.
This was as dominant of a fight as you'll ever see in women's MMA. I mean, it's like, there's like Valentina Priscilla Cachoeira, and then there's this. It's the first 30-24 ever in a women's MMA fight in the UFC, which is very telling. I think it was 30-26, 30-25, and 30-24. I had it 30-26 personally. But anyways, it was a phenomenal fight by Ashley Yoder, and she really did show her improvements. Remember, the Mackenzie Dern fight, she dropped Dern, but for the most part, neither one of them did all that much, and they both just looked like very raw talents. But it does look like Ashley Yoder is kind of starting to make some improvements, slowly but surely, to become, maybe she won't ever be champion, but one day maybe get into that top 15.
And in that featured prelim, they switched the fight between ESPN Plus, ESPN2, Big ESPN. Dan Ige taking on Kevin Aguilar. We told you about it earlier. You could see that slam by Ige, but another great performance by Dan Ige. Please put him up against Julio Arce again. That's
Kevin
all
Aguilar
I want to see.
has a chin on him. I'll give him that. He ate some bombs from Dan Ige. But, I mean, he was there the whole fight. Phenomenal fight. Dan Ige, really impressive performance.
Yeah, and if we move on to the pro circuit, the main card, if you will, Kevin Holland taking on Alessio Di Chirico. Yeah, I mean, and it was weird too because I went on Twitter and Alessio was upset about the fight and thought that he won.
Okay, this is how the fight went. I thought Alessio won the first round. He kind of wobbled Holland with a good elbow in the clinch. And then after that, in the second round, there was kind of a lot of stalling up against the cage by both guys. But Kevin Holland looked to have tweaked his, it was his right shoulder. He believed that he dislocated it. And you saw him, he'd move away from it and he'd kind of, hold his shoulder and almost try to, pop it back in. And then he held his right hand really high, which is something Kevin Holland never does. But even with the dislocated shoulder, he was hitting Alessio with that right. Hit him with a couple right straights right at the end of round 2, close round. Third round, a lot more of the same. Both guys just kind of staring in the mirror the whole time. But again, Kevin Holland was the more active guy. And I thought Alessio did win. I'm not going to lie. I thought he won the first and second round. But it was a really close fight. Nothing really happened for the most part. So you can't be angry when the decision doesn't come out your way. And to still be talking shit on Twitter afterwards and saying that you'll do it in another weight class and all this stuff. I hate to say it. Alessio, I have as many Twitter followers as you do. You can't talk that much.
The other thing is, too, I mean, he said, a different weight class, this and that. We haven't seen him fight in about a year and a half.
Exactly.
So it was a really long layoff for him. Kind of strange that he complained about it after the fact. And moving forward, Andrea Lee taking on Montana De La Rosa. A lot of people taking De La Rosa in this fight. I believe I had. Andrea Lee looked great. And
her striking looked crisp.
The good thing for Andrea Lee is the fact that now she's back on that, kind of, not hype train, but she's back to the point where she can be very marketable in the flyweight division. And it's somebody that the UFC had backed in the past. Obviously, you kind of realize why they backed away a little bit. It was out of her control totally. But now she's back in a spot where she's in a main card. She gets a dominant win. And listen, just keep on rolling. And maybe a couple more wins, you're at the top of the division.
Listen, Andrea Lee's a phenomenal fighter, but it makes no sense to me how she's this good. Her strikes look like they're coming through mud, but she never misses. It's the weirdest thing ever. Keep on doing what you're doing. I mean, you're winning fights. But, she looked really good, especially in the standard department. Her boxing is very crisp.
And I mean, moving forward from that, Andre Ewell taking on Anderson Dos Santos. They moved this from the prelims to the main card when you had the co-main off of this. Andre Ewell, a guy who, came into the UFC on a bit of a run. If you go back and you watch old interviews, Andre Ewell was a guy that at one point was homeless, really. He was. And along with Dodge Sports, so a guy who's been on the podcast in the past, Andre Ewell, man, he gets the win in his UFC debut over Renan Barao, and a lot of people were high on him. Then he loses a fight, and now he comes into this fight taking on Anderson Dos Santos, where, yes, Ewell was the favorite in this one, but man, nobody could have predicted the performance that he put on.
I think Andre Ewell is kind of the victim of... This fight was really odd for some reason due to the fact that Andre Ewell on the feet is phenomenal. He's lightning fast, he has good power, and he carries that throughout all 3 rounds. But you notice the second that Anderson got him to the ground, all of his knowledge of MMA kind of flew out the window. Anderson cut through his guard, got into mount in about half a second, landed good elbows. The only problem was Anderson was kind of overzealous for the submission and he lost position with it. But honestly, if he held Ewell down, he probably would have got the win. Ewell on the feet, though, is something you got to watch out for. His speed and his power, and he does have that weird karate stance, and he just throws straight left. He ducks out, throws a nice right hook. It was a really nice combo. He stunned Anderson about midway through the first round, and you thought, oh, this fight's going to be over. But Anderson... That could have been fight of the night, honestly. It was a phenomenal fight. Good showing for both guys. I don't feel like Dos Santos loses much stock in that, but I feel like Andre Ewell, he really showed what a lot of his skills are.
Yeah, definitely gains, and hopefully he's able to get one of those recognizable names as an opponent, because he's certainly a fun fighter to watch, and definitely a great choice to have this fight on the main card in the event that, John Lineker and Rob Font, we didn't get that, which would have been a great fight, and we were certainly looking forward to it. Moving forward, a fight that was very surprising to be a co-main event.
But very surprising in its result as well.
Yeah, I mean, Rude Boy Randy Brown taking on Bam Bam Brian Barberena. And Barberena's a guy that a lot of people look at his results and it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, he either wins by finish or gets finished. He takes on good fighters, he takes on bad fighters. He wins some, he loses some.
But here's the weird thing. He almost beat Leon Edwards. He dropped Leon Edwards with an uppercut. He actually looked really good in that fight. He's one of these guys who really fights to the level of his competition. Not always in a good way either. I mean, and the Vicente Luque fight, we're very high on Luque, and he's one of the better prospects in the 170 division. But if you look at that fight, you're like, oh my goodness, this guy, he should be in the top 15. He's just not there yet. But I mean, in this fight, it was weird. He did that. He's got a real, like, drunken way of fighting, and I mean that in a positive way. Like, he holds his hands down, and he just kind of, like, shakes around a little bit, and he almost looks disinterested with the fight. But, I mean, when he does land and when he does put his combination together, he has really good results. It just seemed like he could never really get going in this fight.
And it made you wonder, like, is it a cardio issue?
But I don't
like,
think,
what is it?
That's the weird thing. Every time he started to get going, Randy Brown would clinch up, put him up against the cage, and then just kind of, like, slow him down a little bit. And every time Barberena tried to get into the rhythm, Brown would just kind of, like, break it up. And then by the third round, it did look like Barberena was starting to tire a little bit. Root Boy hit him with a really nice front kick to the body that Barberena came out and said, it hit me right in the liver. I just kind of lost my breath after that one. And then just kind of, like, hit him with a flurry up against the cage. It was a phenomenal performance for Randy Brown, especially coming off that terrible loss to Nico Price last year. But for Brian Barberena, this is a weird one. Your stock has never been higher.
Brian Barberena was one of those guys, and you made a really good point. I hate to cut you off, but Brian Barberena looked great in the Luque fight. A win over Brown, maybe he gets a close to a 15 opponent, and then a win there.
Maybe he would have fought Nico Price.
Maybe you're in the top 15. With Randy Brown, I feel like a win, rather, doesn't mean as much.
Exactly.
I mean, a win over Brian Barberena for Randy Brown, I mean...
Everyone still remembers Randy Brown as the guy who got knocked out.
You're forever going to be remembered as the guy that got knocked out that time. So, for him, I mean, it's tough. Think about Sean Salmon. I mean, he's the guy that got knocked out that time. Or Terry Edom. What do people remember him for? Yeah, exactly. So they don't remember the good. They don't
Anyone
remember
else
the
you
bad.
can think of?
So with Randy Brown, it's kind of tough. Travis Brown. Yeah. But, and I hate to laugh people get knocked out. But still, that's the way that you're going to be remembered. So for Randy Brown, he picks up a good win, but he's going to need like 3 or 4 more wins.
I got a name in mind. You know who tore their ACL last year and was supposed to fight Carlos Condit, but that fight didn't happen, so Carlos Condit fought Alex Oliveira. Do you know? I don't leave the house either, Craig. I know weird facts. Matt Brown would be a great fight for him. Matt Brown's looking for a return. Let's be honest, Matt Brown on the feet would probably F Randy Brown up, but Randy Brown's probably just going to take him to the ground. I think it'd be a good fight just due to the fact that...
It's a competitive fight.
Exactly. He would fight a guy with a big name who maybe this fight you're not getting much shine off of, but if you do beat a guy like Matt Brown, you would get quite a bit of shine, and maybe that would put him in that 25-20 range.
And then if we move into that main event, Renato Carneiro taking on Chan Sung Jung. We know what happened.
I was wrong a lot this
week. We talked about it a little bit. But Korean Zombie able to get the win against Moicano. We previewed it in round number 1, the new segment that hopefully Korean Zombie taking on a top opponent.
And also, where does Renato go from this? I know a lot of people want to focus on Chan Sung Jung, but about a year ago, Renato Moicano was seen as one of, if not the brightest prospect in that one.
Brian Ortega.
Well, he did, and he got choked out. But,
title shot.
Exactly, if he did. And he looked really good against Calvin Kattar, too. He's a phenomenal fighter. He just kind of like figured him out in the first round. So it's just kind of a weird place for him, because you know... Technically, he's one of the more technically sound fighters. Phenomenal on the ground. He's got a really good jab. He's got good leg kicks. It's just one of those guys who he's kind of struggling and putting it all together right now. I'd like to see him maybe fight a Shane Burgos next, a guy who is ranked, but he's not near the top. 2 good young guys who... There are some question marks about both guys. I mean, Shane Burgos, who I'm a really big fan of, but his biggest win is a Cub Swanson, who lost 3 in a row before that. And Renato Moicano, his biggest win is also a Cub Swanson, who had lost 2 in a row before that. So I think that could be a fun matchup. It would definitely be a good fight of the night caliber fight, but it's a weird place for him to be at.
And every time Moicano's faced that kind of upper echelon in this division, he struggled mightily.
Exactly, and we can say Chan Sung Jung was ranked behind him, but let's be honest, Chan Sung Jung skill-wise is one of the better guys in the
division. From 2013 until 2019, he's
that man doesn't
top
stop.
of the division. So yeah, I mean, a great event. Looking back on it, probably a B to a B plus.
Oh yeah,
it definitely delivered. Lots of finishes, and even the fights that weren't finishes, they were good fights. And if we move over to Tapology, Bellator 223, Bellator London, a great card there. A lot of fun. I mean, if we move from bottom to top, Franz Malambo, SBG's own, getting the win over Nathan Grayson. I had said watch out for Grayson. He was a guy that could give people fits. Former champion over in Cage Warriors. Glory Buffano getting a win.
Returned.
Alfie Davis getting kicked right in the butthole.
That was real weird.
Able to win the fight. Terry Brazier getting an Americana, something you don't see every single day.
Kate Jackson. First of all, I need to give a shout out to Kate Jackson. I have never thought that she would do anything in the sport of MMA. And boy, have I been wrong. And it's nothing against her. Every time she's in a fight, I'm like, oh, well, she should probably lose this one. But when you should probably lose about 4 in a row and you end up blowing the doors off your competition, I have nothing to say anymore. Honestly, I want Kate Jackson to fight, and I think you know who I'm going to say, Lima Lane McFarland.
And listen, we said this before the fight, Kate Jackson's somebody that if she was in the UFC, she'd be great. They missed the boat when she was on The Ultimate Fighter, and they didn't keep her around.
Oh, but Babe Malecki has to be on
She's
this card.
cleaning it out in Bellator. She's
fights aren't even close.
She's arguably one of the best women's flyweights in the world, and she's doing a great job here. Charlie Leary getting win over Bungard, close fight there. Charlie Ward getting a finish. Costello Van Steenis beating my guy. I said Mike Shipman was going to get the win here. Van Steenis looked great. Denise Kielholtz, they moved her onto the close to the top. Kielholtz gets the win there by finish.
Fabian didn't look amazing.
Didn't look great. Basuku, I mean, it raises his stock, if anything. Gallagher looked good. Paul Daley looked good. Chalmers looked good. Surprisingly, Alvin Manhoof looked really good.
Shout out to Chalmers, too. He had no ground game. He had a negative ground game when he first came to Bellator, but he's actually improved a lot more than I thought he would. It's not great, don't get me wrong. It's nothing world class, but you can tell that he's not just a guy who's a celebrity who wants to try fighting. Like, he's doing it the right way. He's working his way up. He's improving every fight, which is something that you want to see. And he is fighting, he's not fighting the best of the best, but he is slowly fighting slightly better competition, so you are building him up the proper way. And maybe Aaron Chalmers isn't going to go on to be a champion, but it's nice to see a guy who does have a big following trying to do it the right way.
100%, and we talk quite a bit about your main event. So Bellator London, a good card overall. And you know what, Matt? It's time for our highlights and our lowlights.
Yes.
Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Strikeforce Energy. Head on over to the website, strikeforceenergy.com. If you enjoy the flavor of freedom, the company's veteran-owned and everything's made in America. They've got great apparel. You can turn any 16.9-ounce beverage into an energy drink. There's no sugar, no calories, no stirring, or no shaking required. They also have a line of different products as well as Strikeforce coffee. So if I head into my cart, I've got a 4-count sample pack. I've got a 20-ounce coffee mug. And if I head into that checkout, use the promo code FNP, click to apply, and you're going to save 20% off any order. That's FNP at strikeforceenergy.com. All right, Matt, time for the weekend recap and the highlights and the lowlights. So, we'll start with the highlights.
I'm going to start with the lowlight. I like to end on a positive note, personally.
Okay.
So, my lowlight is definitely John Lineker pulling out of, I want to say, his 6th fight in, 12 months. He had that weird tooth issue when he was supposed to fight Dominic Cruz. He had something else going on when he was supposed to fight Jimmy Rivera. It's been a long string of, I don't want to say, not excuses, but it's just been kind of a bad string of luck for John Lineker.
Especially with the loss.
Exactly. Too. I don't think there's a single person out there who doesn't enjoy John Lineker fighting. I mean, he's basically...
His opponents.
Well, exactly. They get very, very hurt. But, he has one of the more fan-friendly styles in the UFC. And for him to be out for such long amounts of time between his fights, it's really a shame just for the fans, too, and not just for him. So that's definitely a low light. You need to be not just more professional, because I did see... There was kind of a rumor saying that it was more of a weight cut issue than anything that took him out of this fight. There was also a cut. I mean, there was multiple things going on in this. So it just... You gotta kind of get your shit together. That's
it's a tough one. I know it was on incredibly short notice that he took the fight, less than 2 weeks. But
don't take short notice fights if you can't make it to the fight.
And I had an argument on Twitter about this. A lot of people said, or somebody had commented under a retweet from Brett Okamoto that I had retweeted and said, he's got to be more professional. He's got to be able to cut the weight, and it shouldn't be difficult for him to cut the weight because, he's had fights at 25, he's had fights at 35.
He's pure muscle.
He's a small guy. He's under 5'5".
That boy is...
Yeah, but at the same time, it's under a week, and it's a lot of weight to cut regardless. And my point was, look at Paul Felder. Paul Felder's a guy that tips the scales just having fun at 196. Huge. And if you gave Paul Felder a short notice fight on a week's notice,
but here's the thing.
He's not going to be able to make it because he's got to go from that top end down to 55.
But you don't give a guy a short notice fight. They accept a short notice fight.
Yeah, exactly.
If you accept it,
John Lineker more than likely shouldn't have accepted the fight. Exactly. If weight cutting was the issue, if the cut was the issue, it's understandable. It's understandable, but still, it's a bad look when, hey, you got to cancel this.
And you've done
times.
It so many, exactly.
My low light of the weekend, it's got to be the Renato Carneiro loss. I mean, every time he's faced top competition, he loses Ortega, he loses Aldo, he loses Korean Zombie, he loses. I mean, if you want, give him a bunch of low-level guys.
Maybe he's going to destroy them.
Maybe make Renato Carneiro the next Thomas Almeida, and just give him guys that suck and make them look good.
I mean, that could be fun.
Sometimes that happens, but I don't know personally what's next for Renato Carneiro. It's really tough to try and tell. I mean, I can bring up the rankings so you can see them. Here you go. I mean...
So he's going to be ranked outside of the top 10. I think that's something that we can both agree on.
Do you give him Darren Elkins?
He would Lamas? He likes Darren Elkins on fire. He probably beats Ricardo Lamas. Shane Burgos has said before, I think that's a really fun fight. Yair, let's be honest. Yair's probably going to spinning head kick him. Mursad, same thing. So that's the thing. as a modular game, he's actually really good in most aspects of MMA. It's the transitions, it's putting it all together. It could be a confidence thing. He does hold his chin so GD high, it's not even funny. He holds it out like this, just after to get hit.
There you go.
And yeah, it's really unfortunate for one of the better prospects in MMA to be like this.
So to go with the highlights,
Yes.
I've got it right here in front of me. I mean, Glory Watson taking on Caree Hill. Both of these women put on a fight of the night type performance, and when they turn professional, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. They're both going to be incredibly successful. For Hill, you know, he saw a lot of pressure, a lot of clinching. There were a lot of good moments in there. Her striking was good, but I'm sure, there's always room for improvement. I think with Team Quest, you're going to see more of that.
Oh, yeah.
For Glory Watson, it's just, just adding a little bit here and there, some fine tuning, if you will. She's going to be a finisher at 25. She's going to be able to grind out decisions at 25. I know this one was split, and it was a really close fight, but both of these women have incredible ceilings at 25. And listen, you could say, hey, Craig, this is a regional women's flyweight title fight, but I'm serious. You got to watch out for them.
My highlight, I think, is pretty obvious. Rafael Lovato Jr. just beat one of the best middleweights on planet Earth to win the Bellator title.
Before this fight, people were saying, if Gegard Mousasi fights Robert Whittaker, who's the best middleweight on planet Earth?
Okay, now, I may have been big on Gegard, but he definitely wouldn't have beat Robert Whittaker before that. I've said
A lot
that
of people were
multiple times.
saying it.
I know a lot of people were, but those people, they don't watch the sport. So, Rafael Lovato Jr., though, I mean, it was really impressive just how he was able to implement his game plan. And you thought, from the get-go, Mousasi, well, he's probably just going to stuff a lot of takedowns, jab his head in, and then knock him out. Nope, I was wrong. He kind of did that in the fourth round, but it doesn't really matter. That's one round. Lovato Jr., for the most part, if he took him to the ground, he just completely outclassed him in the jiu-jitsu world, which, I mean, that's kind of what we figured. If Lovato was going to win, he'd have to take him down. It was a phenomenal fight. It was really good. It was back and forth, too, because Lovato ran away with the first two rounds, and then Gegard, he just came back. And
most people figured 3, 4, and then if he gets 5, there's the win.
Exactly. There's the momentum on his side. It should be not an easy win, but it's kind of, that's the direction the fight was heading. And Lovato Jr. was like, you know what? This is probably going to be my only title shot. I'm not young by any means. Let's just go for it. And you know what? He did. And I was extremely impressed. Not only with the skill, but with the heart that he showed in that fifth round. Very impressive stuff.
The last question, this is the one that we'll end on. It's really tough because for Gegard, people are saying, oh, well, who's next for Gegard? Who's next for Gegard? And in my mind, and I listened to the Luke Thomas show this weekend, and it was a recap of Friday's show, but that Shlemenko fight, man, I had Shlemenko winning that fight. He really hurt Mousasi in that one. I had him winning it, but in this one, of course, Lovato gets to win. So for Mousasi, I don't care what's next. I really don't.
No.
It's what's next for Lovato Jr., and I mean, Lyoto Machida's a guy that's, more or less earned a title shot. He's
That's
pretty
not
good.
a good fight for Lovato, which is odd, but
there's a lot of good fighters at middleweight
There
in
is.
Bellator. It's tough to try and tell who's next for him.
I think the Machida fight would be great. I think they might try to do Machida versus Mousasi, possibly, just to set
Run
that
it
up
back.
Exactly. But I think Machida versus Lovato Jr. is a phenomenal fight. I think the story of that would be very similar to the story of this. If Lovato can't take him down, I don't care if Machida's 75 years old. He's going to kick him in the head eventually. But here's the thing. Machida's good on the ground. He's not fit. Well, okay, he's pretty good on the ground. But he's not Rafael Lovato Jr. on the ground. No one really is. So it's a very interesting fight. Styles make fights. That's a shout out to Mike Goldberg in the early 2000s. But I think you really can't go wrong no matter where they go.
No, and really looking forward to that. What's next for Lovato Jr., what's next for Mousasi, what's next for us. You can catch me on Between the Links tomorrow night. We're going to have some guests on there, so make sure you check that out, iTunes, Stitcher, CastBox. And with us, we're going to have an episode later on this week previewing the fights coming up this weekend. Again, toss us a sub if you can. Toss us a like if you like us. If you don't,
those DMs with your video questions as well. We'd love to answer them on the next show.
Round number 1. And if you don't, you probably wouldn't have made it this far. So again, we really appreciate you. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at CraigAllenFMP, at MattAllenFMP. And hopefully you can find us later on this week.